Hi everyone. The Q&A for the RSA Galaxy has provided a lot of new feedback for this ship, so I'm just going to jump right into it. There were a lot of questions that they answered which were specifically about the modules and how they functioned. Like for instance, if you didn't have one installed, then there'd just be a big empty room in its place that didn't have any functionality to it. And it would have what they've described as being a shell that kept it airtight. You'd still be able to walk through it, so it wouldn't stop you from being able to get from the hangar to the rest of the ship. You could use this empty space to store things like spare cargo boxes or other items, but you're not going to have any way to lock them down. So trying to use this space for extra storage wouldn't be any different than it would be if you tried to store boxes anywhere else in the ship. The devs also went into detail about what it's going to take to have a module installed, and they've said that you're going to have to go to a place like Cousin Crow's to get it done, and then it's going to take a predetermined amount of time for them to complete the job. But the main thing to be aware of is that swapping out modules isn't going to be like it is right now when you're swapping out components. It's going to be an involved process. You're not going to be able to do it from your hangar or using your mobi-glass, and it's going to cost you some amount of UEC to get it done. Another thing about these modules is that they're not like the pods that you'd find on the Carrack. Once they've been installed into a ship, they're not going to be easily removed, so you're not going to be able to do things like eject it out and then use them as a temporary base. And the devs have also explained a bit more about some of the non-modular parts of the ship in more detail. Like for instance, they verified that the two rooms that are on the upper deck and just behind the bridge are a lift and the docking collar, while the forwardmost room on the lower deck is used to house components, and the one next to it is a locker room that could be used to hold armor and EVA gear for the crew. They've also confirmed that the Galaxy doesn't have a medical bay in the non-modular part of the ship. And it seems that the pilot isn't going to have any control over any of the turrets, but they will be able to fire its missiles. And the overall maneuverability of the Galaxy was described as being closer to the Carracks than it is to the Constellation. And the last of the updates on the non-modular portion of the ship is about its hangar. And it seems that the hangar isn't going to have any refueling or repair capabilities. Its official size is XXS, which is a small size out of all the landing pads. And the ships that are confirmed to be able to fit into it are the Pisces, the Argo MPUV, the Razor, the 85X, and the M50. And it isn't going to have a rear ramp, but the cargo module has a lift that's capable of holding two 32 SU boxes, so anything that could fit onto it could also be stored inside of the ship. And lastly, the default 64 SUs of cargo that the Galaxy can hold is going to be stored along both walls of the hangar in a way that's not going to interfere with its ability to store a ship. There were also several updates on how the refining module is going to work. They've said that it's going to have two reactors that are described as being a lot larger than the Expanses, but it's only going to be able to run two separate refining jobs at once, so to compensate for this, they'll be able to process and store a lot higher amounts of ore. And it should be noted that the Galaxy is not going to be able to process and dump refined Quantanium directly into its tanks like the Odyssey can. Now, I know that this is a lot of negative information for you to have to process, but I think that it's important for you to know as much as you can about a ship so that you can make the best possible choice based on what's currently known about it. And if you're still on the fence about the Galaxy after all this, you can always buy it in-game using the in-game currency, so you never have to worry about missing out. The biggest takeaway from this whole thing is that they've clearly defined how modularity is going to work for all ships that have swappable compartments. And they've already talked about this in the past with ships like the Kraken and the Privateer, and what it would take to turn one into the other, but they've never officially said that this was going to be the case with all modular ships, at least not until now. So it's important to keep in mind that modularity may mean that you can use one ship to do multiple tasks, but there's also going to be a downside to it. And it's going to cost you every time you want to swap out one module for another. It's going to take time to complete the process, and you're only going to be able to do it at select locations. Whereas owning several dedicated ships is going to cost you more in the long run, but they're going to be better at doing what their assigned roles are, and they're going to always be ready to go at a moment's notice. These are just some good things for you to keep in mind while you're building your fleet. I've been your host, Law of the West. Thanks for watching, and take care.